This is the Digital Trust Podcast. In every episode, we strive to bring support to those of you who serve on the front lines and in the trenches of data and technology. We endeavor to bring understanding to the under-resourced and underappreciated, help remove your stress, and provide relief to your pain. Welcome to the Digital Trust Podcast. Sit down with us as we give you hard-hitting advisory conversations to help you build digital trust with your stakeholders and clients, and actionable takeaways to help you become a digitally trustworthy organization.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Digital Trust Podcast. My name is Christian Redshaw. I am your host today, along with my co-host, Rossilyne Tan. Rossilyne, welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
How are you doing today?
Very good.
Awesome. We have with us once again, Ben Beeson. He is the CEO and founder of Galahad Risk Solutions, an insurance brokerage out of Washington, D.C. Ben, welcome once again to the show.
Christian and Ross, thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Our pleasure. Let's get right into it, Ben. We want to talk about the insurance industry today, and I want to start from the prospective insurance buyer's point of view and look at the application. What can a company expect to encounter in filling out an insurance application? What information do they need to have ready?
Yeah, so thanks, Christian. Yeah, the first thing I'd say is, insurance doesn't replace good security, right? It complements it. And so, when you start to think about filling out an insurance application, you need to be ready, actually, and you need your broker to help you to ensure you're ready to do that. And what that means is you're expected to have some degree of, controls in terms of security. And happy to sort of highlight some of what those are. And some of these are actually, if you like, fails. If you don't have them, then you're going to have a hard time getting insured. Top of that list might be multi-factor authentication, for example, MFA. Backups. Do you back up your data? Think about what happens when your data is encrypted from a ransomware attack. Do you regularly change your passwords? Do you patch any vulnerabilities that known vulnerabilities that might you should be aware of? A big one is if you have employees, do you train your employees to spot things like phishing attacks and emails that might not be what they see? So these are questions that if you haven't thought about them first, then you'll need to think about them before you fill out your application form. Otherwise, all that will happen is you'll unfortunately have to go away and deal with these. But before you do any of this, and maybe I'm slightly biased being a broker, but that's what a good broker can do, is help get you ready for that process, right?
Mm-hmm. And so, speaking of good brokers, that's why we have you on the show, Ben, because you really stand out to me in that category. But in general, how do you feel like insurance brokers are in terms of the quality of advice and expertise that they bring to their clients these days when it comes to cyber?
Yeah, so I think we touched on this a little bit in the last episode, where we talked a bit about why small businesses, there aren't enough of them buying cyber insurance. And it's not the fault of insurance brokers, but insurance brokers are not security experts, right? And so it's not easy if you're a generalist and you're dealing in all sorts of other areas and risk classes. If you're not a specialist, then of course you're not going to be comfortable having a conversation about security controls with your client. And so and so there are specialists. I'm one of them, but the majority of them, unfortunately, are sit in the larger brokers who are more focused on larger companies, and understandably, because that's where there's more margin and there's revenue opportunity. And so, what we need is more investment toward on the broker, if you like, in the broker side, towards and targeting more smaller businesses, and we're going to help them.
Mm-hmm. That completely makes sense. And before I pass it over to Roz, uh, quick question about the insurance underwriting side of things. How
Yeah.
good of a job does the insurance industry do you think, at assessing cyber risk?
I think it's doing a great job. It's much better than it used to be. There's some real innovation. I gave a bit of a hard time to the brokers just now, but actually on the insurance company, particularly what are known as managing general agents, which essentially look like insurers, although they're intermediaries, but they are innovating. They're also known as insurtechs, and they're coming up with uh, an ability to take data and look at it using analytics, and make sense of what that risk looks like in real time. Because let's face it, it's not a rear view mirror risk underwriting approach. That doesn't work in cyber, right? The threat keeps
Mhm.
changing all the time. So you need real time visibility, and through things like proprietary data, external scans of companies' digital assets. The industry is doing a very good job. There's a long way to go. Nobody has solved cyber risk, not in the cybersecurity industry and not in the cyber insurance industry,
True.
but some good investment and progress is being made.
Can you speak more what's happening now that security and insurance are becoming more integrated?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's a good segue from my last point, I think. You're seeing some insurers now offer security services themselves, security tools. For a long time, you saw that post incident, right, where there would be an incident response or forensics company would be brought in and paid for by the insurer to deal with the breach and help clean it up and get that company back on its feet. What about before things happen? So now you're seeing some insurers, for example, offer their own managed detection and response capability, which I think is fantastic, and even better. And this is a big change and something that goes back to this book that we touched on that I wrote a chapter on 10 years ago. Is you're also starting to see some incentives between the insurance and the security tool, whether it's that company's or somebody else's, to use it. So whether that's the premium you pay is more competitive if you use the tool, it might be an email filtering tool. I talked about MDR just now, or EDR. Um, and that's great because it drives better resilience because there's a financial incentive. I'll pay less on my premium, or I might get broader coverage if I use that tool. So that is what we want, particularly for the small business sector where money is tight. And secondly, fantastic if you can have a one-stop shop where I can go to my insurance carrier and I can get my security tools as well. Not necessarily in its entirety, but certainly that's the direction it's moving in.
Would you say that given the synergies between the cybersecurity and insurance industry have kind of merged in this scenario, are there still differences in approach when it comes to understanding and handling cyber risk between the two industries?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say the industries have merged. I wouldn't use that word. I think that's there's certainly more collaboration. I think for a long time, as you'll know, I'm sure, Ross, there was no collaboration, right? I mean, CISOs in particular in companies and CIOs viewed insurance almost like if I buy insurance, it shows I'm failing at my job. When we've totally moved away from that now, haven't we? Where it's something that I think most companies who are sophisticated enough realize that it's part of a resilient strategy that can support that. Because you doesn't matter what you invest in, you could still get attacked, you could still get compromised, right? So security, the security industry, the cybersecurity industry, and the cyber insurance industry still have a way to go to totally align. One of the key challenges still remains, Ros, is that the buyer is different for both sides, right? So typically for insurance, it's on the financial side of the house. It's the CFO, it's the It's the GC, it's the FD, whoever, the risk manager drives that. And as we all know on the cybersecurity, it's the CIO, it's the CISO, right? So that's for bigger businesses, maybe not so much for smaller businesses, but the larger the business, in some ways, the bigger the problem in that sense.
So Ben, you alluded to this before about where the industry was, very incident response focused. Where did that end up? Where did the insurance industry end up as a result of that? What were the challenges that they faced with that approach?
Well, it was doing a good job in terms of response, but it wasn't helping companies before the incident. What do they call it? Left of boom or something,
Right.
before the incident happens. And the insurance is, in other lines, has always been quite good at trying to help avoid risk, or mitigate it rather. And that wasn't really happening. So it was doing a very good job dealing with the fallout. But it was underselling itself, if you like. There was much more that insurance could be doing, and that's what we've been talking about, and that's what we're now starting to see before things go wrong.
Right. So you're really bringing us up to speed with the present state of the insurance as it intersects with risk management. We have time for probably just under a minute here with one last question, Ben. Now looking forward, if we continue the timeline from where the insurance industry was, where it is and where it's going, do you have any predictions for us about where the industry might be leading us and evolving?
One of the exciting things is starting to happen, just big picture, is there's always been a concern that there's not enough capital available to the industry to deal with what is a huge risk potentially, right? And typically insurance companies tap what are known as reinsurance companies to access more capital, offset risk, but access, ability to give them to underwrite more risk. But now you're starting to see using data, using analytics, accessing the capital markets and you're starting to see catastrophe bonds come in without getting too much into the weeds. So that's important. And then secondly, of course, I'm going to come back to where we started this conversation. I'm a big believer in you really are going to see small businesses, many, many more of them in the next few years, buy cyber insurance, because it's just, as the awareness gets there, it just makes total sense. And some of that is off their own volition, but I think contractually as well, many companies now are going to require small businesses they work with to carry cyber insurance. It's just going to be something that will be forced on people, on those businesses.
Well, that sounds like a great future, Ben, and you'll be there to help them when that happens.
I hope so.
Amazing. Beautiful. Well, Ben, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to our viewers and listeners for spending your time with us and joining us in this conversation. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for joining us today on the Digital Trust Podcast. If you found this conversation helpful, please share it with someone you care about. And if you'd like to receive our monthly newsletter, please click the link in the description to subscribe. And to put your mind at ease, our newsletter will include episode summaries with key points and actionable takeaways, plus a heads up on the upcoming episode guests. Rest assured, it won't be a spammy sales message, and we will never sell or share your information. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode.